Welcome to Rambam in Depth. Today we'll be discussing the Rambam Hilchos Meiser Karbonos, Perek Yud Daled, Halacha Yud Beis. In the middle of the Halacha, the Rambam says as follows: Nedarim v'nedaves, when a person makes a neder, a vow to bring a certain animal, to bring a certain sacrifice. When a davis, where he designates the actual animal and says this should be holy, this should be a sacrifice. In either of these cases, ein tzarech lahaitze b'svasav klum. Person does not have to verbalize, doesn't have to vocalize this with his lips. He doesn't have to say the words with speech. Ella im Gomorrah b'libay, even if he just resolves in his heart, in his thoughts, v'lihaitze b'svasav klum, and didn't utter a single thing, chayev, he has the obligation. And the Rambam illustrates this. Ketzad, how so? Gomorrah b'libay, he resolves in his heart, shezu ayla, that this is an ayla, a burnt offering. He's obligated to bring that as a sacrifice. And it's based on a pasuk, shenemar kol nediv leiv yivieha. Anyone who is generous of the heart shall bring the offering. So the Torah is telling us, benedivus leiv chayiv lahavi, was just generosity of the heart. It means it's just in your heart, in your thoughts. You already have the obligation to bring it. The same thing would apply to any of the other types of vows of things that are kodshim, that are holy, and the nedava, where you designate a certain object, a certain animal. Now, in a letter that the Rebbe wrote to his father, published in Likutei Levi Yitzchak, in the Igros of Likutei Levi Yitzchak, the Rebbe asked his father a question in Likutei Torah of the Alter Rebbe. It says the karban tzarich lahagdisha bepeh, that you have to sanctify a sacrifice bepeh, verbally, with your mouth. Then he asks another question from Rashi in Me'ilah, Rav Chesamid Aleph, where the Mishnah says chatas ha'eif mayolin ba mishahugdasha. When you make a bird intended as a chatas, as a sin offering, and you designate it, make it holy, you are subject to the laws of Me'ilah. You can't benefit from it. And Rashi adds the words bepeh. You made it holy bepeh, with your mouth. So that seems to contradict the Gomorrah in Shavuos, which is the source of the Rambam, Daf Chavav Amud Beis, that kodshim could be made holy even with machshava, even with thought. So the Rebbe gives an answer that Rashi doesn't mean literally that you have to do it with your mouth. He's just trying to exclude that you don't need maisa, you don't need action, you don't have to do a physical action. But be'emes, the truth is that machshava is also good enough. But then the Rebbe's father brings a raya from the Rambam, that the Rambam holds that it doesn't help to do it with machshava, to make it holy. What does machshava accomplish? That it imposes an obligation on you. If you made something holy with your mouth, verbally, then there's a kedusha that devolves on it, and you're subject to the laws of Me'ilah. You're not allowed to benefit from it. It's considered holy. But if you only did it by machshava, it creates an obligation for you to bring it, but it doesn't make it holy. And that's how Reb Leivik, Rebbe's father, interprets the Rambam. And if you look at the language of the Rambam, it seems to be saying that very clearly. He says, Kama b'liba shazu ayla, if someone resolved in his heart that it is an ayla, chayiv lahavi, he has an obligation to bring it. It doesn't say harei kadosh, that it's holy. It's only an obligation to bring it. And that diuk in the Rambam is brought also by the Rogachover and Safnas Paneach. It's also brought by Rabbi Yosef Engel and Gilyana Hashas. It's also brought by the Avnei Nezer, and others as well. So we have at least 4 Gedolei Yisrael of the previous generations that seem to make the same diuk, and the Rambam prove the Rambam from the Rambam that chayiv lahavi, you have to bring it. What's interesting is that the Rebbe in his Tshuvos Ubiyurim brings the Rambam as a proof for the very opposite, that there is kedusha. Here the Rebbe says as follows: Ha'pa'ulos nases aydei machshava, av she'ein sham dibur u'maisa klal, that the machshava alone is enough, without speech, without action. What is included in that category, where thought alone is enough? It can be nidveis kodshim, like a person makes a vow, something should be holy, and he brings the Gemara in Shavuos Daf Chavav Amud Beis, and he brings the Rambam that we just quoted, Hilchos Meiser Kabbanis, the Rebbe says, Demuchach Sham. From there you could prove Shebehema Niskatsha Idei Machshavta, that the animal actually becomes holy through his thought. V'leirak shel Adam Chal Chiyuv L'Kadosh Behema Ul Haviyah Nedav. And it's not just that the person has an obligation to make the animal holy and to bring it as a contribution. So what is the raya from Shavuos, you could say, is a good raya, because the Gomorrah there in Shavuos equates the din of kodshim to Terumah. And just like Terumah becomes holy through machshava, same thing with kodshim. That's how we see the Rebbe holds. But to bring a raya from the Rambam's language, it seems clearly that chayiv lahavi only has an obligation to bring it, but it doesn't become holy. So be'emes, if we think about it, the pashtus of the lashon of the Rambam indicates the way the Rebbe is medayik. Because the Rambam is talking about neder and nedava. What's the difference between neder and nedava? Neder is where you say, harei alai, I have an obligation to bring something. I have an obligation to bring a shlamim or an oila. And nedava is where you point to the animal. You don't have to point physically, but you designate an animal. You say, this animal shall be an oila. This animal shall be a shlamim. Harei zu oila. So when a person says harei alai, and you say that he has an obligation to bring the animal, that we understand. He made that vow that he has an obligation to bring the sacrifice. But when he says harei zu, he says this animal is an oila. Why should it be obligated to bring it? If it doesn't make it holy, why should he bring it? The only reason you have to bring an nedava is that you made it holy. Once you make it holy, you have an obligation to bring it as a sacrifice. It is a sacrifice. But if Harei Oila doesn't make it holy, then why should there be an obligation to bring it? It's not holy. There's nothing. So the truth is that I found later on that the Sefer Simchas Yontif from the Maharit al-Ghazi also learns Pshat in this Rambam. First, he tries to be medayik as the Lekuta Levi Yitzchak and the Safnas Paneach, but then he says no. Even the Gomorrah believe miyad chal kedushas oila olav ligamri, and the only reason he says chayev lahavi, that he has to bring it, he doesn't say harei kadosh, is because he's putting it together with neder. And neder, you can't say it becomes holy. He didn't make a neder that it should become holy. He only said, I'm going to bring it. And the Simchas Yontif concludes that the Rambam does not necessarily mean that chayev lahavi. But be'emes, if you're medayik, the Rebbe seems to be medayik that the Rambam's saying the actual opposite, that it does become holy. Not just you can't be medayik, that the Rambam is not saying that there's only a chayev lahavi, but from the Rambam's words, you see clearly that there is kedusha in it. The truth is that the Rambam's shita is obviously the way the Rebbe is medayik, that it does have a force to make it holy, but there is a me'iri that says clearly that there is no me'ilah. So the question is, how would the me'iri and all the other achreinim, how would they learn pshat in this Rambam? Why are you chayiv lahavi? You said nedava, that you designated the animal. Why should there be chayiv lahavi? So the answer could be is that they understood that when a person makes an nedava, there are really two things to the word nedava. One is that you're making it holy, and you have an obligation to bring it. So the machshava at least helps that the part of the nedava where you have an obligation to bring it, that should take effect, and you have the chiyuv. But it doesn't make it holy. But from the pashtus, the lashon of a Rambam, it seems clearly, and from the equation to Terumah, it seems clearly that it does become holy. The way the Rebbe Levi Yitzchak explains and diffuses the problem from the Gomorrah in Shavuos, so the Gomorrah compares Terumah, Kodshim to Terumah, is that he says Terumah itself doesn't make it holy. When you separate Terumah and Machshava, it only makes you obligated. It removes the Isser of Tevel, and it gives you an obligation to be mafresh Terumah, but it doesn't actually become holy. And that's a separate Shakla B'Tarya.